Michael, can you hear me? How's that? Michael, can you hear me? You cannot hear me. Why can't you hear me? What is going on here? Check, 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 check. No, that's not right. Okay, let me close this. I can hear you. Check, 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 check. Spotify is fine. All right, check, 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 1 2 1 2, check, check. What is the I'm hearing you fine. Hey, I'm hearing you fine and I'm seeing you fine, but you're not hearing me.
No, nothing.
And that is a problem. Let me
Were you hearing me fine before? Because if so, I'm not going to use the headset.
don't know.
Let me test it real quick. Sorry.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Well, actually, let me check on here. Go ahead.
Is this okay?
Yes, I'm hearing you fine. Yeah, but we got to fix my audio. I'm not sure why that is not working.
Let me just test.
Okay, let me work on that.
I'm doing the test button a few times, and my
What's
test
that?
is getting.
What's that?
I've done the test for audio, and it seems like my test is giving me sound.
Right. No, you're fine. You're not the problem, but it's going to be a problem not having my audio. So let me work on that.
Yeah, do what you got to do.
Okay. Check, 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 check. I didn't have the audio source selected. Simple fix. All right, let me make sure we're looking good in scene, the recap. Let me put your link over there. Copy, where's the link? Copy solo view link. You're looking at the games, right? You're sounding distant. Give me a check. No, can you let's see if we can get you closer to the mic. Yeah, we may want to go back to that headset with their built-in mic. And what you're going to want to do is, are you on OGS? Okay, I'm going to be in EJ Broadcast 1. Oh, actually, it doesn't matter. You can just, if you just tell me what's your handle in OGS? What OO? B as in boy or D as in dog? I'm not, I'm just not hearing you. All right, folks. A few minutes late, but here we are. Sorry about that little sound glitch earlier. We were dealing with getting the mics going. But welcome, Chris Garlock here, and Michael Fodera. 5 Don has joined us. Michael, thank you for joining us.
Happy to be here. Excited to review these games.
Yeah, so I think what we're going to do is take a look at the live games, and then if we have time, we'll maybe take a look at some of the games. That one of them went, I think, like 4 hours earlier today. So we'll see what we can get to, and I will try. I will try and monitor the chat as well. But
Okay,
for this first time, we'll see how it goes. So over to you.
Sounds great. So the first game we're going to be taking a look at is Val Lewis versus Eric Lee. Val is taking black and Eric is taking white. So let's just jump right into it. And if we have any questions in the chat, Chris, feel free. And if you have any questions, let me know as well. Happy to take them.
I'm sure I'm going to have questions.
Yeah. So black takes a large knight's move in the lower right. White immediately invades. Again, very AI moves. I'm sure both these players are well versed in them. Black took Sente to take one of the large spots left on the left side just to break up that formation. Nothing too much to comment about here, all very common moves. Eric took the large knight's move in the lower side. I think classic Go theory would have kind of this move at K3 serving as one of the larger moves here. I think in the game, black chose to play at N17 to kind of finish out that Joseki in the upper right side. Black has a couple of options here, so maybe playing at N17 this early is not something you have to do. So typically you might see black either Hane at S17. Of course, black can Hane at N17, and sorry, not Hane, excuse me, extend at N17 as they did in the game, and then typically this will end in white Sente, and white will try to break this formation on this right side. Alternatively, black can Hane here. This probably wouldn't be the best variation in this case because black's influence would not really be towards the right direction. And we might see something like this because white has the ladder, black would have to play this knight's move. So this is probably not the direction that black would want to play. This stone at F17 is really neutralizing how effective that variation in the upper right could be. So the Val playing the extension here makes a lot of sense. But of course, white's going to have to break it. And when we think about which direction to play against, it may feel very natural to play this kind of R13 move, but that's probably the wrong direction of play because you're using your thickness to make territory. And so you have all these, 6 black stones here, but when you actually look at how many points that black's gonna get, it's maybe 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, maybe 12 or so points. With 6 stones, it's not really an effective use of the territory. So, I think black would probably want to be pushing from this side, and the idea being that you want to push your opponent into your strength. In the game, though, black first made some exchanges in the corner. These are pretty common exchanges just to kind of get this little bit of a squeeze here so that there's no kind of chicanery that could happen on the second line. Maybe that white might try to play something like S14 to get some eye shape for the group. So this is a very common sequence just to surround white in the corner. And then black plays this D4 move to break up the Shamari formation on the left side. Again, another move that black can certainly consider is this K4 move or K3, both totally viable. It's a big point for both sides. This is just maybe a little bit more of an active way of playing. And black really needs to be careful with this variation. This is really something you typically only do if you have the ladder. If you don't have the ladder, it gets a little bit dicey. So white at this point has 2 common moves. There's a couple moves you can certainly extend here or here, but I would say the 2 most common moves tends to be the Hane on the inside or the Hane on the outside. Oh, sorry, inside and outside. If you play on the inside, black will Hane here. White will typically play here. Black will connect. White will play here. Black usually gets this cut move in first. At this point, white has 2 options. White can typically white will extend out, black will play here, white will then protect, and black will play here. But this sequence here feels quite good for black. It's allowing black to get that K4 stone that it was trying for, while also reducing the effectiveness of this large Shamar in the lower left. So this probably isn't something that white wants to play. So that's why in the game, when we have this attached, instead of playing there, we play it on the outside. Black Haned on the inside. White cuts. Black extends. These are all kind of forced moves after this Hane on the outside. This move here is the idea behind it, and again, this is one of the reasons you really need this ladder, is that you try to create a couple cutting points here that eventually white will have to protect so that you can get some shape on the outside. So interestingly, even though the ladder, it's not an immediate ladder because white gets the Atari here, you still want to get this Atari move. Black will extend up, white will capture this one stone. Black can either Hane here first, or as they did in the game, Atari first here. White will take, black Hanes, white Hanes, black Hanes again. White gets this cut here. The idea being that if white just connects here, this shape on the outside is maybe a little bit stronger. With this extra stone here, it's not 100% clear to me that you actually want to get this shape, as opposed to allowing black to play here because maybe you want to cut here. So this might be one of those situations where white might actually want to avoid making that cut. It's hard to say because it's possible that maybe black will Tanuki at this point because there's some flexibility here. So I can see why white wanted to get it. Black connects, white connects, and then black takes, or excuse me, Atari's the stone. And so, black has made a nice formation using the three left stones on the upper left part of the board, and of course, white takes a position in the lower left. This is generally considered an even result. It's a little bit different here with already having these black stones here, so it's hard to say whether this stone here is at D10 is over concentrated or well placed, because it does prevent any sort of ladders that happen here. And I remember before I did say that there is a ladder that could potentially be an issue later on if this stone was ever able to get out. So let's keep going. So again, we talked about here the idea behind what black pushing white into its strength. So white wants to take the big move at R8, not just protecting this R11 stone, giving it a little bit more eye shape, but also later on potentially targeting a move at R4 or another attach at Q4 or something in this lower right corner. So it's both a defensive move and has some implications later on for that lower right corner. Black gets this Atari, and it's quite large, even though, it only feels like maybe 1 or 2 points. It does have to do with the outside thickness, and you can see here that black's actually playing a little bit more of an influence game than white. White has taken 1, 2, 3 corners, plus a little bit on the side. Black's really trying to map out some territory in the center as well. So this has a lot of implications for the fights in the center, as well as any sort of territory that black can make here. White jumped out. What white wanted to avoid was black getting another move here. White has to play here. Black takes, white connects, and then black plays here. And being pushed onto the second line is going to be a little bit painful, even though you do get a movement extra on the board. Elsewhere on the board, it's not clear that that's going to be larger than this influence that black is getting on the outside. So that's why white added an extra move here. And you might say, okay, well, what if white connects here? Then the black's move at H4 is going to be quite a bit better. So getting this move on the outside is a little bit nicer.
Oh, Mike, you gotta tell me that those 2 stones are not important. Come on now.
That
I'm teasing.
it leaves open a cutting point. It's not ridiculous.
No, I know.
So black takes. So white plays on the outside. This is a pretty common move here, just to get a little bit of shape. It also is a little bit of a testing move for white, or for black to test white on what it wants to prioritize. Almost always you'll see white connect at C17. However, there are some situations where white will play at E16, whether it wants to prioritize the outside. The difference here is that after white plays E16, there is a cut here. Now these stones will die. However, black gets this nice forcing move at B14 and gets a little bit more strength towards the outside. So we often make this exchange earlier on to see, okay, does white want to take the strength on the outside that having this extra E16 move has, or does white want to protect its corner a little bit more? So I would say 90% of the time, though, we will see white just connect at C17. This is just a pretty common kind of endgame-esque move. It forces white to play here. And then later on, black can play at A5 to reduce how many points white gets. So this is just often an exchange you make pretty early in the game before other things on the board happen. This move here is kind of interesting. It's unfortunate because it doesn't feel like there's really too many valuable spots on the board right now. You know, Black's main territory that it would get would be somewhere in the center, but we don't really want to make center territory. And so Black is trying to figure out a way to use its influence to kind of pressure White to get a little bit of give White a little territory in exchange for the outside and make a better use of the situation here. You know, I think another thing that Black could consider is a move at N2. It does help with the kind of invasions that we might expect to see from White over here. But I guess Black is thinking that if it doesn't make use of this wall here and doesn't make use of this thickness over here, it may not have enough because White does have quite a lot of territory in these three corners. So this move makes sense because again, it's trying to Val is trying to use their influence a little bit more actively than just taking territory. So again, all moves to try to focus on this kind of center influence. And Black instead of playing that kind of N3 move that we talked about before, because of this extra strength here, is able to play a little bit more aggressively and try to map out a larger area. So this is well done by Black, I think. Although White certainly is not dissatisfied by this result. It had somewhat of a weak floating group here, and now Black is able to White's perfectly fine, and all of its groups are very strong, so it can come in and invade or even counter attack these Black groups. So if I were Black, I'd be afraid of White playing this N9 move. Maybe this is a little premature because Black does have friends elsewhere on the board and consider it attack. So let's see what Eric does in the game. So does a little bit of prep moves, makes this peep here. We typically don't want to peep when we can cut. However, cutting here is going to be quite difficult. If we cut, it's not even like it's a ladder, it's a net. So it's unlikely that this cut is ever going to be valuable. That's why White's probably comfortable making this peep exchange now. Black, however, counter peeps here, doesn't want to meekly connect and wants to try to separate this group here. It's thinking, I have all these stones on the outside. Let me go and attack. If Black chooses to counter attack now, this maybe gets into a dicey fight if White chooses to counterattack now, this maybe gets into a dicey fight for White because it's not going to be too hard for Black to take care of this group here. And now White has a weak floating group in the center. And again, because Black is so strong here, this may be a good fight for White, good fight for Black. So I could see White not wanting to immediately cut and instead play elsewhere. So now, though, we've made this exchange here. The value of this exchange, exchanging this O15 for P14, even though that P14 may be a locally strong move, is that now we are leaving open this cut, and now it's one extra thing that Black is going to have to be mindful of. This one stone at O15 we can treat as light. We just exchange one move here for one move here. It's not a lot of points on the board. So now Black has to not only be mindful of what's going on in this fight here, but this potential Aji of this cut here as well. Black jumps out. White makes this very common exchange. If Black were to extend here, this move here is going to be quite annoying for Black, and White's able to completely break through. If Black were to try to surround like this, we have the common Tsuji, the snapback. So unfortunately, Black would have to be a little bit more creative here than just extending out. So I think in the game, Black extends, getting rid of that wedge weakness. And White Hane's on top. And I think that's as far as my game record goes. Let me see if I have more. No, I think that's as far as my game record goes. Just see if they have a little bit more that they're still playing. Chris, do you know if that is which board that is by chance? Okay. Actually, it looks like they haven't made too much progress since then, so we can go ahead and move to the next one, Chris.
Okay, cool. Can you still hear me?
Yep, I still can. Yep.
Good. Let me just check something.
Chris, let me know when you're ready for me.
Okay, some random sound blasting in my ear. I don't know where it's coming from. But you can go ahead. Are we going to go to our second game now?
Chris, I actually can't hear you. I'm only able to hear you from the Twitch chat.
Is it now all right? How about now? No, still not getting audio. That's very weird.
Let me test. No, unfortunately, I'm not getting anything from you.
All right, hold on a sec. I'll tell you what we'll do. Let's just go back to rotating boards for a second. Studio mode.
Wednesday night. Yeah, yeah. It's pretty gnarly. We're at I think 95 degrees today. Something wild. I, well, I've had to turn off my AC so I make sure I don't get background noise. So I'll be eager for once the review's over to put that back on. So we are looking at Jay Donnelly playing black versus Alan Huang playing white. So Alan is a good buddy of mine. We've played numerous games. I think I've only beaten him once at 2 stones. Otherwise, he has trounced me. So he is very strong. So let me go ahead and start moving some pieces around. Black pincers this lone stone at R5. I'm not too familiar with the variations that kind of come from this pincer. Some of the moves by Alan here, I really haven't seen too much, although I can try to explain why I think they might be good. This move here, it seems like it's this very floating move, but what it's really trying to do is keep this group light and make it a little difficult for black to really get a strong attack out of this shape. So if black were to kind of play this move here, white might choose to give up these 2 stones and play this P7 move with the idea of eventually attacking this move at R9. If black were to just back off after white plays here, again, it's still pretty difficult to get a good attack on this group. So I would expect white to either play a very solid move, something like this, or just play away because there's really no strong attack in this lower right now. So this is a very flexible move. In the game, however, black chose to peep. Sorry, not peep. Chose to jump towards the stones with the idea of eventually coming back and attacking at maybe 06 or some other similar move to cut off this stone, this R5 stone from these 2 stones, or this 08 stone from these 2 stones. White chose to peep, however. If black just chooses to connect, that's a little bit passive. And later on, potentially now, later on, there's moves like 3-11, which will potentially put a little bit of pressure on the stone, or maybe something here, where it's just making black very stuck on the 3rd line. And so white's able to get some sente and play elsewhere on the board. So I might expect, maybe something like this afterwards, or if white really wants to get aggressive later on, maybe attack these 3 stones. So that's why black doesn't want to just protect. So in the game, black chose to play here. I'm not 100% sure about this move. Maybe I might have a little bit better thought, but I don't love the fact that white gets this here, extends, and then this white shape is very strong, and white can even get quite a lot of points here by playing at S7 later on, and there is still some invasion here. So I view this as probably a little bit better for white at this stage. But again, it's so early in the game, it doesn't really matter too much. Black decides to Tanuki, white attaches underneath, and we have a very classic Joseki. Black, instead of finishing the Joseki by playing at D10 or C10, I guess what black wanted to avoid was that white would get a very comfortable move at C6. The idea being that later on, there are moves at C12 or D12 or even B12 that may reduce how much territory black is going to be able to get. And it's because this C10 stone is so far away, it's a little harder to invade the lower left corner. So I think black wanted to play a little bit more actively, but of course the trade-off is that white is going to pincer now. And black is going to shoulder hit to try to gain some strength to come back and attack this pincer. But because this pincer is far away, it's going to be difficult to really get a strong attack on it. So in the game, black extended. Now the kind of classical Joseki would be to play G3, or you might see G2 if white doesn't want to be pressed onto the line. So the reason why maybe white doesn't want to play here is that it doesn't want to have to answer this move at G5 and allow black to come back and play this move. So sometimes you might see white play at G2 so that there's no extra strength that black gets here. In the game, however, though, white chose to play F3, and this one really prioritizes Sente. So the idea being that black's going to extend because we don't want to allow white to get this Hane here. However, after black extends, if black were to extend one more time, a very classic move, or a very traditional, kind of Hante move, white is not going to answer, and white will instead play something like this or jump out here, neutralizing the effectiveness of this black wall. And unfortunately, black's move here while large, is not really going to be too problematic because there's really not that many points over here. And if black chooses to play from here, white can easily live. So the idea being that no player really wants to get this h4 move. However, it's still better that white makes these exchanges on the third line than if you did this jump, extend, play here. This is a little bit better because now if white wants to get this move here, it's not that big because white's already played this h3 move. So kind of the nuances between why someone might choose these three different variations. Oh, sorry. So instead of playing, both sides saw that the value of this h4 move wasn't that big because this n2 stone is already there to reduce any influence. So black chose to cap on top to try to attack. White is very happy just to take away the territory. And this to me feels like a pretty okay variation for white, even though black does get a strong outside. This white here is kind of neutralizing the effectiveness of this black wall. So white was able to destroy the black territory, have this white strength here, and it's not really clear where black's going to really be making its points other than this upper right.
I had a question, and then again, folks, I'm monitoring the chat, so if you've got questions, jump in with questions. I'm sure Mike's happy to answer them. Is E12 really necessary? Is that the biggest move?
It's quite large. So if you play elsewhere, I could see white immediately coming to try to attack these 4 stones and just harass them. Now, it's very unlikely that black will die here, but if black has to try to live with these stones, it's just a liability. And while it's attacking, white will be able to make these kind of natural moves that will help out. And the other thing too is while this group is not terribly weak, and I don't know if you can see my mouse or not. The kind of the stones floating at E10, E7, and those 3 stones at E to G line. They're not, going to die anytime soon, but they aren't exactly strong either. There are these peep moves at D6 that could be kind of annoying. So connecting the 2 groups is going to make it much more comfortable for black later on, both to get territory in the center, also to make sure everything lives. So it's quite large, even though it doesn't immediately get you territory, or isn't immediately sente either. Yeah. So I have my AI review here. I'm going to disable that, but it is very interesting that the move here at B8 is kind of something that I don't think players would typically expect to play. And this is an interesting sacrifice technique. If black were to play here and white were to try to just live out, black can get a very strong position on the outside, or potentially even kill these white groups here. So something like this would happen. So white cannot block by playing here. This would be a disaster for white. So white has to play here, in which case black can get a nice profit of exchange here. And now these stones here are not fully alive on the left side. So it's not something that I would have come up with. This is very much an AI variation, but I'll save the AI review for now so we can keep it a little bit more human. So white plays this very natural N17 move attacking the upper right corner. Black pincers, wants to use its strength of this wall over here to get a better attack on the stone. If black were to just kind of play a passive move by playing in the corner, white playing at K16 would map out quite a lot of territory on the top, and this would probably be a game where black may just not have enough space on the board to make territory. So black needs to cause a little bit of complication and separate some groups to get profit. White plays here. The idea behind this move is to give white a little bit of strength before it comes and invades in the corner. If black were to Hane and play like this, the strength of this tiger's mouth is not that significant. And now white can either play something like P18, could jump out here to put pressure on these stones here. And so this is just a nice move to get a little bit of strength to come back into the corner.
YouTube.
So black chooses to extend back because black doesn't want to deal with that. Understands that if white gets this natural move at M16, it's a little painful for black. So black extends back, hoping that white kind of forces the issue and connects by itself. White chooses to continue to extend on top. Black plays here. This move to me feels like black would want to cut afterwards, although I think in the game black chose to play here. The idea being that if white connects here, black will play here and be able to make quite a lot of territory on the upper right side. However, in the game, white chose to play here using a little bit of a sacrifice technique. So of course, after this clamp here, white comes down. Black has no choice but to cut. Now you could Atari here first, although I think this leaves a little bit of less Aji in the corner. And now it's unclear exactly what the best Aji for. So what white did first before Atariing here is to play at Q17. The idea being that if black were to block the peep at Q16, white would be able to live by coming underneath. And this only works because black didn't get this move at O16 if white Ataried. So if you had this Atari first and then try to play this, black would be able to play at P18 and cut these stones off. So the timing of this is really quite crucial. So white played at Q17, black came down and protected. Now after black is already protected, you can get the Atari for free. Black connects, you do these type of squeezing moves on the outside. It's probably very tempting to protect at this G7 to try to capture this this H17 stone, although it's really not that big. We have a really strong corner, and white's 4 stones on the outside are really not all that weak. You know, if black does, just play something else here quick. If black does try to capture the stone, we can get a really strong position on the outside. And you know, while yes, black will get this points, white's position on the outside is too strong to really get any chance of attacking. And all you've gained is maybe about 6 or 8 points. So that means that white was able to get 2 moves on the outside. So just too significant for white. So white's not going to want to capture that lone stone at H17 now. We can do that later on in the game. So after the sequence, however, white pushes here. Black has no choice but to block. White plays at R15. The idea here is not that these 2 stones need to die, but you can need to live. But white can sacrifice these 2 stones to get a position on the outside. So black extends in the corner to try to kill these 2 stones. White extends down. The idea behind this being that if black were to try to attack these stones, white would be able to run out. It shouldn't be too hard. Also, moves in the corner may be forcing. So for example, this move here may be quite annoying for black to deal with. So it's very difficult to kill these 2 stones. So in the game, however, black chose to play here, wanted to prevent that kind of squeeze that we saw in the corner. Rather than Atari here and fix black's weakness and then come back and connect, white chose to directly jump here. Oh, white made an exchange on the inside first just to force black to make an extra move. The idea behind this is it gives white some extra liberties, and it is sente, so that black does have to extend 1 more. Excuse me. Now white will jump on the outside. Black is still going to have to deal with this weakness here. So black is going to fix, excuse me. Oh, and it looks like black chose to fix by protecting here. So I guess the thought being that we don't need to immediately protect the stone if white were to cut. We may be able to get some squeeze out of it, but it's not like the stone is immediately dead. So this is not necessarily going to be a great squeeze for white. So rather than to protect, we have the time to protect this. If we did protect here, white would probably start a fight by trying to separate these 2 groups. So this move at S10 is really trying to make sure that this black group on the right side doesn't get cut. And at this point in time, there's no immediate issue with this black stone at Q15. But unfortunately, the Aji is significant. And so any moves at like P13, or even maybe something like this at P12, is going to really put some serious pressure on this black stone. So this is a really advantageous fight for white. White has strength in the center. The black has a weak group here, a weak group here. White really doesn't have any weak groups because of this Aji, of this kind of cutting stone at piece 15. So I think that's all I have for this game. It's only been a few minutes since I started this review.
No, I really, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm enjoying it. So, it's great. And these are such interesting games, and we get to see players at, top players at various stages. So it's pretty cool. All right, I'm going to, give me 1 second. I'm going to bring back our, and I just have to give a huge shout out to Daniel Lambert, who's just been, he did the look and feel for the Canadian Open over the weekend, which was just fabulous, really sharp. I loved being from Rochester. I was loving the maple leaf motif. and he could have just copied our ProQual stuff from last year, but that's not the way he works. We've got a brand new look and feel, so I hope you guys appreciate it. And let me just bring the rotating boards back for 1 second. You guys can look at that, and we will change the game, and we'll be right back. You want to sit up?
I turn on once the stream goes. Right?
I know. We're back, folks. We're back after our union mandated break, and we've got game three. Game three looks like who have we got here? Evan.
Evan Tan and Eric Yoder. So
Yeah.
Eric is playing black and Evan is playing white.
Oh, and I know I don't know what's going on with the Daniel will jump in and fix that, folks. So sorry, we're just gonna soldier on. All right, what's going on?
So yeah, well, let's go ahead and take a look. Go ahead. So black does a double approach on the lower left 4/4 stone. So there's two kind of common moves that we would see nowadays: F4 or this white E6 move. I haven't really seen this too much before AI. Typically, you'll either see a Hane on the outside or a Hane on the inside. In this particular choice, there's quite a lot of variations with both. In this particular choice, black Hane on the inside. Black extends here. So white has two options. White can Atari at D7. Black will come down. White will pressure from the outside. Black will play this diagonal move to try to break into the corner a little bit. White will continue to play here. And now black chooses to sacrifice these three stones and take the corner. And the idea being that black can later on maybe get this move at G7, get this Atari, and potentially get some squeezes in the corner as well. So typically black would Tanuki at this point. And so white gets a strong position on the outside, but black did take away the corner. So generally consider a reasonable result for both sides. However, this game, instead of Atariing from the outside, white Ataried on the inside and chose to take the corner territory. White kicks because it wants to protect the corner. If we were to play away right now, black playing at C3 would kind of defeat the purpose of all these exchanges. And not only would it reduce the corner territory, black, it doesn't really impact black's outside. So this would be quite painful. So of course, white does need to do something here to protect. Black will, so white kicks, black blocks, black will Hane on the second line and white blocks. Getting ahead of myself there.
Use your words, Michael. Use your words.
And now black wants to use this influence to get a better attack on this N3 stone. So black pincers. White attaches in the corner. There's white could certainly Tanuki right now. However, I think it doesn't necessarily want to. White doesn't necessarily want to deal with a move at Q6. Again, the idea being that a Q6 move would push white into black's strength here. So I think white would rather just settle the group a little bit before getting attacked more severely. So black has two options here: can Hane on the outside and Hane on the inside. This Hane on the inside is going to create a little bit more complications just because it creates a couple more extra groups. I haven't actually seen this variation before where white chooses to Hane on the outside. I think this may be a little bit more of an AI variation. What we would have typically have seen in the past would white would wedge here. Black has two choices. Black can either play at O2 or the more classical variation, which is O4. White would extend. Black would Atari at R2. White would extend. Black would play P2 to try to capture these stones. Depending on the ladder, white would choose to either play at N2 or Atari at R5. So the simple variation is to Atari at R5. Black protects with N2. White Atari is here. Black connects. And white gets the Sente to Tanuki. Now in a local position, this is generally considered good for white. And this is more of the kind of classic variation. But so here though, instead of wedging first, white chose to Atari first. Black has no choice but to extend. Now white chose to wedge. So I guess the idea being that after black Atari is on the outside, white has the option of playing here. If black protects something like this gets a little bit complicated. If white plays here and black takes, of course, white will capture these stones. If black Atari is here, then white can escape by playing here. And unfortunately, this would not work out too well for black because white would get all of these stones here. So even though black does this kind of get this double Panuki formation, white's formation here is much better. This was also black's corner to begin with, and it also destroys the kind of potential that black was hoping to develop here. So at this point in time, black is no longer able to come out and play here. So black has to connect, has to capture at this O2 stone. And of course, white will come back and play here. But all of this is even result so far. So this must be some new AI variation. Black approaches. White takes this really large move at F2. I was a little surprised by black playing away here. I think I would have expected black to get this Atari in at G2. If white takes, then black would Tanuki. But the idea being that if you play here, get this move Tanuki, and then later on, white cuts at G3, you could potentially counter Atari by playing here, and maybe this isn't quite as severe on the group, and so you can Tanuki again. Or maybe just play a move on the outside and not really worry about it, because eventually white will need to fix this. So I was a little surprised that black didn't play the G2, but of course this, it's hard to fault this move at R14. So white immediately came back to play the stone again.
Wow,
Now that now that there's just no G2 stone, if black does not want to connect here. This is such ugly shape, and of course white's gonna be very happy to come back here, and now this stone at E6 starts to come alive. So white was able to get this G2 move in, and black is almost never going to actually want to connect at F4. So all this kind of territory that we were trying to map here got wiped out. However, black is now focusing on the upper side of the board. So it's not like we can say that black has really lost anything. It's just they've changed their focus in the game. So this is a little bit of a special case variation. We would typically expect to see a pincer here. Sometimes we'd even see the C17 invasion. This is really one where we're focusing on the outside. And it makes sense here because black has this really thick wall and already this kind of knight's move over here. So it works well in this particular situation, although typically we would not be happy to give fourth line territory to white.
So a lot of cash.
It's a lot of cash, although white doesn't really have the time to protect it. White, I think, is going to have to invade here. Now, of course, later on, there may be some Aji that exists here. Maybe a move like this could be quite annoying. It may not immediately work because white does have some friends over here and quite a few liberties. So this may not be immediately apparent, but something that black will eventually be able to do later on. Even if it starts with something like this, forcing white to live in the corner, that might be something that black can consider too. So we'll see how that develops later on. Again, when we're thinking about where to play from, playing from here is not using our thickness properly. We have so many stones here, and we're pushing into not weakness per se, but not exactly our strength over here. So of course, black has to push from this side push this white stone into its strength. This is a very interesting move here. So the idea behind it is white wants to test what black is going to do before it commits. So white could certainly jump out and play here, and that's a totally fine and reasonable move. However, when white plays here, it's able to see whether black prioritizes the corner by playing a move at Q17 or wants to get the strongest move at Q18, leaving potentially the ability to come back and run at this N18 move. So giving this white stone a little bit more strength as opposed to forcing it to run out. So the idea that if you do this later on and you've already committed some stones here, and now when you play here, it's possible that instead black will play here to focus on the attack in the center as opposed to taking the corner territory. So it's just giving a little bit of optionality to this white stone so that before you commit to actually protecting it.
Optionality, I like that.
So black chose to kick here. This is probably the strongest move, with the idea being that if white were to play out here, black will block, and then white will live in the corner. But of course, we can attack this white stone over here. If white chooses to live here, black can try to kill, but we will have some weaknesses here that white will try to exploit later on as well. So, but for now, though, white doesn't really want to touch this stone, right? White's seen that black has answered. has answered in a specific way. So, obviously if black were to answer here, we know that there's no potential for an invasion here. If black were to answer here, we know that black's focusing on this outside. This is kind of saying that black could answer in either direction, which means that we still have quite a lot of aji left in the corner to try to live. Black chooses this really interesting light move here, although because it's so far apart, sorry, white chooses it, excuse me, because it's so far apart, black has no choice but to try to cut. And it makes sense that black would try to cut because it has all of its stones around here. If you look at the cash on the board, we can say there's maybe about 12-ish points in this upper side guaranteed, maybe some loss because of endgame. This is probably a 25, 30 point corner, and maybe another 10 or so points here. So I would say white right now probably is about 40, 45 before Comey, maybe a little bit more. So maybe white has about 55 with Comey. Now black has a lot of influence here, and of course, if black got this entire side, this would be an easy game. But black hasn't really mapped out very much territory at all.
Black has like almost no count, like what, 4
No
points,
guaranteed points. Yeah.
4 points in the lower right.
Yeah, exactly. So black has no choice but to try to separate these two stones. So black attaches, white hanes, black cuts. So this is already creating a very complicated variation here. So now, again, we see kind of the value of this P18 move. Coming back, white hasn't invested too many stones into this L17. It can focus instead on the center. So if black chooses to protect the corner by playing here, we will be able to see white extend out and probably get some easy life from this group. And maybe black did profit in the center, but white was able to live without too much issue. If, however, black chooses to play here, we still have some cutting points that exist. And we also can have this group invade in the corner. So the idea being that there's going to be this cut here at 017 block play here. So again, it's really just kind of maximizing the amount of aji that exists. It's forcing black to, if it wants to kill you, leave open those weaknesses later on. So white pushes through, black blocks, white immediately cuts. The idea being that if, yes, black can capture these 3 stones without an issue. However, white gets a lot of forcing moves on the outside and can come back and fix some of the weaknesses here, or potentially do something a little bit more aggressive. And so it's going to be harder to get a really serious attack on these white stones. At this point, I would find it almost impossible to kill these white stones here. So black did profit a little bit in the corner, but it may not be enough to actually win the game given how much white has.
That's like a 20 odd point corner now.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
So white cuts. Instead of immediately protecting, black chose to play here in the center. This is obviously a very strong move. Black's trying to focus on the territory. The downside, of course, though, is that now white can easily live in the corner. However, if white chooses to do that, this is going to be very damaging for the outside. So I think white would probably need to play this move here if it wants to try to capture these 2 stones. Black gets the Satari, white will connect. Black plays here, and you've built a really strong position on the outside, or potentially white will get this move in first. White, maybe something like this. I don't know, it's tough to say. If black captures these stones, you connect out. White does get a strong position. There's a lot of cutting stones. So I don't think this may be a little bit too severe of a way to play. So let's see what white did in the game. There's so many variations, it's hard to tell. So white chose probably the most aggressive line, which is to extend the stone. I guess the idea being that white thought that it doesn't matter what I get in this upper right. If this stone gets captured, I lose too much in the center. So white extends. And it's also, not only does it protect the, it protects the stone, it also still takes advantage of the cuts that exist at K15 and also Atari and laddering this stone at M12. So this is a really large move. Black Atari is the stone. White counter Atari is the idea being that if black were to extend here, white will push through here. Black maybe can capture the stone, but then white will capture the stone here. And there's still some weakness in the corner for white to potentially live. And so it's this territory on the left side has been broken. White is pretty close to alive. It's going to be very hard to actually kill it. And there is that aji in the corner. So instead, white chooses, after black extends, white chose to extend out. The idea being that if black plays here, white will Atari, black will connect. and then we can capture these 3 stones. That's certainly not going to be a viable result for white, or for black, excuse me. So after white extends here, we probably won't be connecting here. So instead, we'll probably try to capture these stones. Black will Atari, white will extend. And now for the time being, white has gotten some shape here to live. So sacrificed a little bit on the top, these 3 stones. However, there's still quite a lot of endgame moves here to reduce how many points black gets, and it's very difficult to attack this stone. So it's hard to say who's better. If white is able to get Sente here, I think there probably is a slight better result for white, because I'm still not 100% sure where black is going to get all of its territory from. So white does Atari on the outside. Black cuts, the idea being that is thinking this is probably a ladder breaker, which it very well might be. So let's see if black Ataris, white Ataris, black extends, white Ataris again. So these are locally losing moves for black. These are point losing moves. However, if black is able to get this ladder in, that makes this come back into potentially being black territory again. Because if this stone can extend out, now not only do these stones have some issues, these stones at K13 and L12, but the stones at L14 and all those stones in the upper right corner are in severe danger. So even though this loses points locally in the lower right corner, it may be necessary in order to get a good attack in the center. So black Hanes, and now white takes. So the idea being that if white chooses not to answer, all black is going to get is a squeeze. And while the squeeze is painful, it's not nearly as painful as getting attacked in the center group. So at this point, white jumps out. Rather than capture here, we can capture later. It might as well just escape. These 4 stones are no longer that big. Much better just to make some eye space. I guess the idea being that if black plays here, if white captures, white might now try to play here instead of trying to Atari from the outside. So if we Atari from the outside, it's pretty clear we shouldn't answer it. Therefore, we should play here. Now at this point, because black still has that option, black can play here and reduce how much territory white gets. And this may, I don't believe this is Sente on the group, but it's still quite large. And follow-up moves in the corner will be Sente on the group. So white jumps out, black takes, when white continues to jump out here. So we can do a quick territory check. So again, we counted probably about 12 to 15 in this upper left corner, maybe a little less, probably about 30 here. So we're looking at about 45. Maybe this side is about 10, so we're looking at like 55. And then the center here, we could probably add another 10 points. This Panuki is going to certainly give white some advantage later on. And of course, these 2 stones here. So I could see this being well over 10 points, if not closer to 15 or 20. And when we look at the territory that black has, we have the 6, 8, 10, 12, 15, maybe about 15 points in the upper right, maybe a little bit more to closer to 20. We can say this influence is probably worth another 10. So we'll say it's about 25. And it's really hard to measure how much territory is at this stage. So I think at this stage, let's see. Yeah. So the score estimator is estimating white at about 6-point lead right now. And it's also, not only is it's not a huge lead, it's not like it's some unsurmountable lead, but it is hard to get this points back, because where is black going to get its territory from, right? It's difficult for black to make the center territory because white already has the Panuki here. It's not the easiest for black to make the side territory because white already has a strong position here. So I see this being a little bit of an uphill battle for black. Now, again, we talked about this Aji in the corner. So this is a really classic shape to attack the Aji. If you try to play this move here and Atari, you can sacrifice and lose these stones, but this is a nice profit for black. And certainly black might choose to not do this now, but do this later if it plays out this simply. If you try to fight here, it's going to be quite a dangerous fight for white, because white doesn't have too many liberties on either side. So if white extends here, we can get some significant squeezes, if not even something a little bit more powerful by something like this. So, but even if all we get are the squeezes here, this is already somewhat painful and the corner is quite small. So that's why white doesn't necessarily want to take the most severe line by playing at E17. White might want to back off and just play at D17, the C17, excuse me. White connects, or black connects, excuse me, and then black extends. So not too dissimilar from this variation here, where white sacrifices a stone. Also, in the variation in the game, white makes out a little bit better because it did not have to sacrifice an extra stone at D18. Or sorry, at CE18. It's E17. So we were able to get this exchange and still potentially protect this stone at E18 later on. So a big difference when it comes to endgame here. Black Atari the stone, makes sense, trying to get territory here. It also makes this cut come alive as well. So I would expect white to probably fix. Yep, white fixed. Black will take. And then white takes the large move here. Does not want to let black get this move and destroy the territory on the left side. And again, when we look at where are the big spots on the board, it's going to be very difficult for black to really get that much territory in the center because of this white Panuki. So it makes sense that white focused on this left side of the board, because if white plays here and black plays elsewhere, we can come back and make this entire left side ours. So black breaks up the territory. White chooses to run out now. Because we've gotten this extra stone here, these 5 stones are a little bit weaker. These 2 stones are still floating, and we have this Panuki here. So it's possible that this attack can yield some result and completely destroy the territory in the center and force these black stones to run, while maybe white makes some profit on the lower side as well.
Just a quick note reminding folks, we have one more live game to look at, and then it's going to be viewer's choice. We'll let you guys pick one game from the first round that we'll take a quick look at. So far, we have a vote in for the Alan Evan game, and we'll see whether Alan really had a 70-point lead in that game. I don't know.
I looked at it quickly. It was a good game for Alan for sure.
Okay. All right. So we'll take a quick look at that before we wrap up for tonight. So
yeah, I can go ahead and jump to that game, or should I take a look at the fourth one?
Is there anything else interesting in this game? I want to see. I mean, I agree with your assessment. It's I'm just curious to see whether black makes any progress in catching up in the games that we reckon that we have so far.
And what we have so far, I'm just looking at the AI graph. It's only a few more moves. It doesn't look like the answer is yes.
Okay.
But again, this is one of those games where it's really hard to see where black can get that territory from, because the only weak group on the board for white is this center group, but it's also this group of black, and this group of black are actually not that strong. So even though the point difference is small, it's one of those games where it will be hard to catch up, because there's just everything is so small.
Right. And at this level, it's just, you're not likely, nobody's going to fall asleep at the switch, especially not with what's at stake in these games. So, all right, we'll put you guys back on the carousel for a second while Michael brings up that Alan. And yeah, we've got 2 votes for that, so we're going to go with that. So give us a second, folks. We'll be right back.
Do you know which?
I'm going to find out. Yeah.
Yeah. I have them up, actually.
All right, folks, we are back. Thanks for your patience. And yes, we're going to take a look at the Allen Evan game. There was a question, Michael, as to whether Allen really had a 70-point lead. So we will see.
Yeah. I took a look at the game before, and I think it looked pretty even for most of the beginning, and then a very complicated fight happened, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was 70 points.
We like complicated fights. Let's take a look.
Sure. So invasion here. This is probably one of the less common 3-3 variations because it's reliant on a ladder. So well, I'll just quickly go over it. If white plays here, black blocks. If white has the ladder, let's say white has a move here, white can play on the inside, black will Atari, white will Atari on the outside, black will take, and then white will play here. And this is probably a good result for white. However, white will need to be mindful of the ladder breaker here later on. And additionally, there's also, forcing moves in the corner like a D2. So white can get a really strong, thick position on the outside. So that's typically why we don't see this move unless there's a 4-4 stone or some other strong position on the outside by black. White did choose to push. Black chose to play here. Now, again, we talked about the fact that we don't necessarily want to cut in the inside when the ladder doesn't work, because if we do that, and we have a ladder breaker, this is not going to be that great for black. Or not great for white, excuse me. So instead, white chose to Hane at C2. The idea being that if black were to play away, we have a potential attack on the stones here, or potentially can cut and capture these stones. However, now that we've played the C2 stone, we can treat these two stones at C3 and C4 pretty lightly. Because normally we want to capture them in the most optimal way as possible. So for example, we might see this variation where white would sacrifice the outside, give black a Panuki to capture these two stones. However, if you have to spend this extra move at C2 to capture it, that's not that comfortable, right? If we spend all these moves to capture the stone here, that's not efficient. If we do this normally, we never actually need to capture at C2. We only capture at C2 if someone prompts us to. So that's why after playing C2 in the game, black devalues the C3 and C4 stones. So by playing at D6. Again, white plays a move on the inside. It's still a large move. We certainly don't want to let black get this Hane and create a really nice base for itself. This is a painful result. So it's a huge move, but it makes it even more so that we don't care about these two stones here, and we can take a large move elsewhere on the board. So black plays at C14. White chooses to pincer. Again, focusing on the fact that this group in the lower left corner is not fully alive. So black adds a move to counter pincer, strengthening this group. Also by proxy, weakening the C11 and then making the C14 a little bit stronger as well. White jumps, black counter pincers, treating this stone a little bit lightly. White caps on top, focusing again on the C14 stone, and black is all but happy to give up the territory, thinking that this is too many moves here to capture this one stone at C14. White extends, black plays this move here. Now white can play down and play this move. However, there are still quite a few spaces left on the board that are still open. So we have these two corners over here that have not been touched. While this is a large move to fully capture the stone, it's only worth about maybe 15 points of territory. Maybe a little bit more, because if black were to get this move here, it does put a little bit pressure on this group. So maybe closer to worth 20, 25, as opposed to just the 15 points that actually is being captured. But for now, playing an empty corner is probably going to be a little bit larger. So white chooses to play the empty corner. Black blocks, plays here, and black plays the enclosure in the upper right. And again, we talked about how this was a large move, but it may not have been as large while there were still corners left to invade. So white chooses to invade, and now black comes back and plays this C16 move. So it's large because it takes away the territory. But again, if later on I'm thinking that black could potentially peep and counterattack these stones. Now, maybe it doesn't work immediately. Maybe white has some counter strategies to connect back or what have you, but it seems like it could be pretty severe with 1 or 2 moves later on the outside. So, yes, this R9 move is absolutely massive. If we come back and play here and we let black get a move over here, this builds up quite a lot of territory. But at the very least, we're safe on the upper left. So black plays here, white pincers. It's going to be very hard for white to get a really strong attack on these stones here, and because the real issue is that white's never really going to make much territory on this right side. There's already a knight's move here that reduces how far white will be able to extend. So the only place that white can really get territory is on this lower side. So of course that white, after black extends out by playing here, white tries to get a little bit more territory, put some pressure on black, and build up this territory here. But by doing so, it does weaken these 2 stones on the outside. So yes, this is a perfectly reasonable line, but it's not like we've really gained all that much here. Black pressures from the outside. White hanes. Black exchanges this move in the corner with the idea of potentially squeezing, depending on how black plays. So if white were to play here, of course we can Atari. If white were to Atari here first, white has a couple of cutting points, and this exchange here is a perfectly reasonable exchange on the outside, and it also creates some shortage of liberty issues for white, excuse me. So I think that's really what black is trying to do with this move, is just create a little bit of shortage of issues, shortage of liberties. So black hanes in the inside, white Ataris, black connects, white plays here. Black hasn't lost anything from this exchange. These are just inside moves being exchanged. And this outside move is, again, a pretty natural move. So none of these moves are actually losing points for black, or not losing much. I mean, maybe you could have a T2 move that forces white to play at S1, but in general, not losing very small. But the real key here is that black wants to get this cut move. Now, if we were to extend by playing here, black will Atari, white will take, and then black gets to capture the stone. If we connect, obviously these get captured, so that's no good. If we play here, this completely destroys the white territory, and this is unplayable.
So sad.
So unfortunately, white can't be strong and play at this position here without completely destroying its territory. So white has no choice but to extend out. Now white's going to try to do this, but black has gotten a little bit more strength here, so this is not exactly comfortable. Black blocks to try to stop white from expanding its territory. There's also some weaknesses here. So if white were to try to fight this, I might try to do something like this. And I think these stones by white would get killed. And it's kind of a forced sequence, unfortunately. I don't really know if there's anything other than connecting here. If you play here, you Atari, obviously this is no good, because you'll be able to capture the stone at K3. So it's a tough situation if white were to really give a strong attack. So white has no choice but to protect. It's hard to say that this is the strongest protection move. My natural instinct, of course, would be to play here, but
Sure.
I guess the thought being that if you play this move, maybe there's a squeeze here that white's going to have to deal with. So if white plays here, black Ataris plays, take, plays here. If you block, you have this squeeze.
Oof.
If white connects, then you capture. So even though this is ugly shape, it's hard to find something that's actually better. But to me, this feels like black has profited a little bit. If white has to make this ugly shape in order to survive, and black's able to get this hane, it's unclear to me that white has really gained all that much, because it's very hard to kill this black stones. They're quite strong. There's quite a few of them. It's easy to make eye space by even just playing at something like S7 or R6. It's not hard to make eye space. So the only real group that black has to worry about are these 3 stones here. But unfortunately, white does have these 2 weak stones in the center, so white's going to have a lot to think about here. Black's doing this just to get a little bit of an eye shape on the bottom side. Hane, block, extend. White chooses to extend again, cut. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, white chooses to countercut, which is an extremely dangerous situation, because there's so many weak groups for both sides, right? We have black has 1 weak group, 2 weak groups, 3 weak groups, but white has 1, 2, 3 weak groups here. So it's a really complicated fight with quite a lot going on. Black Atari'd. white counter Atari. The idea being that, okay, you can take me here, but I'll capture these stones. And maybe this is a reasonable line, but then it's also possible that white, maybe black probably will get this exchange first, gets my shape. You know, white will potentially lose these two stones at h6, or black gets some squeezing moves on the outside with a k7 type move. So let's see what black did in the game. So white chose to Atari first. Black had no choice but to connect. White plays this Atari move here to reduce the liberties. Plays here. So even though white gave up this stone here, it's still a locally dead shape for white. Oh, sorry, for black. So it's okay to do that, and it reduces the amount of liberties that black ultimately has. If you were to try to do it from this direction, now black has these two liberties here. And so it causes a little bit of friction on the outside of how black will play. So that was white's intention, although unfortunately I'm not sure that this really ends up working out that much better, because now we still have this kind of two liberties, you know, at h1 and at yeah. So I'm not too sure if this works out better for white than just having played this Atari move here. I'm wondering if some of the fear is maybe that black can play this move here and these groups are not fully connected yet. It's a little hard to say. What's white's fear? If black extends, connect here. I think this is probably black's fear.
Ooh,
is that black can sacrifice these stones here to potentially get attack on the corner. So that might be what white is trying to do by playing at J2. And then this stone at E2 makes a lot of sense to capture these stones. But again, it goes back to talking about how these two stones black really devalued. And unfortunately, in this shape, it's not like white can play here, because then white plays here. So black early on sacrificing these two stones, continually making them feel less and less big. And eventually they're just going to be worth the points that they sit on. So it's just going to be about a 6 or 8 point move to actually capture this B4 stone. So white tiger's mouth. Now black is going for a sacrifice technique here. If black chooses to cut here, we do get these two stones. However, it's now these stones are fully out, and these black stones on you know, the N4 line are in a little bit of pressure to actually make life if we just continue to do moves like this. You know, it's possible that this black group will live, but white has gotten a strong position on the outside, and these stones are already, these black stones at H2 are already dead. So if we go back a bit, black chooses to attack on the hole, with the idea being that it wants to completely seal in these white stones. It's not trying to live with this black group necessarily. It's just trying to seal it in so that these stones at the N4 space become a little bit stronger, and maybe there's a counter attack at the Q7 or Q9 stones, because they're not fully alive yet either. So white blocks with the tiger's mouth. Black exchanges a few moves on the inside to try to get a little bit more space. And really what black is trying to do, black is trying to get a ko here. By exchanging this move first, if white were to block by playing here, we have an immediate ko, which is a little bit dangerous for black, because there's these ko threats on the outside at J6 or at K6, which will be a game-ending result for white. So white has no choice but to play here. Now, even if white were to get this move at J1, G1, and black plays H1, the best that white has here is a ko to kill. So that's why this L1 move is so valuable. Black is again trying to continue the squeeze play. Triple Hanes, double Hanes, hard to say what that is. But again, continuing the thought being that white can't Atari here. If it does, you play here. White blocks at L7. Black gets the squeeze, connect. And now we've gotten a really strong position on the outside. Our squeeze is still working, and there's still some liberty issues here for white. So black doesn't need to fear this Atari at K8. If we try to fear the Atari at at J9, black will connect. it's also unclear what white has really gained here, because we have some throw-in moves that are going to be quite painful, and black would be able to capture by playing this. So white would have no choice but to protect like this, but there's still squeeze moves that exist here as well. And so, I don't know if white's going to be able to connect up these two groups at, the C16 line of stones to these stones at the bottom. And again, it's very difficult for white to kill these like H2 stones because of that ko at L1. So after this double hane, white extends, black squeezes, plays here. Black just gets a forcing move here. The idea behind this is that if you get it now, it's guaranteed sente, and it's a guaranteed loss of point. And white has no choice but to play here. If white chooses to play here, this gives black an extra liberty here. So of course white's going to just continue to block, but it gets that extra point now. If we allowed white to play here first, for example, I mean, this doesn't work immediately, but if we don't get this exchange in first, and white plays here, later on it's not 100% clear if black plays here or white plays here. So that's the idea behind it. Or maybe it was a time CG for all we know.
Probably a little early for that.
Yeah. So black gets a squeeze on the outside, continues to squeeze on the outside. And again, black, even though these black stones at H2 are dying, this thickness that black is getting is absolutely massive. It's going to be able to attack these, this E14 stones over here, as well as these R9 stones over here. And it really, all black gave up was maybe an additional 15, 20 points. Not that big of a deal. And that was already territory that white had mapped out for itself.
15, 20 points is chump change. Right? Can't even find that can't even find that in the couch.
But if we go back a bit, right? This was the area that white had mapped out to begin with. So if anything, black hasn't really lost anything. It was already area that we were planning to give to white.
I mean, honestly, for me, it goes back to, and I know you said B2, was big. I wasn't crazy about it. I'm not disagreeing with the analysis, but but you look at what then white had to follow all of these moves to try and make something on that side, and it's just not, it's not working out well. And this massive wall that black is getting is freaking me out.
Yeah, it's going to be a painful game for white moving forward, for sure. So I think we were at this point. Yep.
That is like the wall of death, man.
Exactly. And again, it didn't. It's the other really unfortunate part for white is that it's not a clean kill. It is a ko to kill.
Right.
So black gets this target and squeeze. White pushes, reduces, which is dangerous. White's doing this because it's trying to create more cutting points for black, but it's also taking a liberty that white may desperately need in this ko fight.
You can actually count the liberties.
Oh yeah, I mean, again, right now, you play. I guess you do this one. Black has. Black pushes through. No choice but to connect. Now, all of these moves are forcing, but eventually we will find out whether or not, oh, sorry, I'm doing slightly different variations. All these moves are forcing because these stones on the black stones on the outside don't have many liberties. But once these black stones on the outsides are alive, we're still going to have to deal with this reckoning of a ko. And Alan has read out that these stones on the outside have just enough liberties where it'll be able to live before these stones are able to kill them. So continuing the squeeze here. But again, now we're at this position where after this move, if white were to extend, black doesn't have, white can't hane here because white's going to have an issue with black playing here. And now these black stones are perfectly alive and we still have an issue here. These black stones have no issue getting out because there's no shortage of liberties. So white's not able to hane to actually kill the stone. So white has to kind of give up on attacking this group and come back and play the moves on the inside to kill. But, black's fine with that because, again, white still needs to play this ko. White got a squeeze here. Oh, sorry, black got the squeeze here. Again, doing this move before you lose the opportunity, because let's say that white plays here now, this no longer is necessarily sente because you can capture the stones here. So that's why black got this move here. It forces white to capture, and white still owes that move at m1 anyway. So this is really nice timing by black to get that extra point in. Black plays here, white takes. Now black doesn't even care, but black doesn't need to fight this ko immediately. It can just capture the stone on the outside, reduce all of the ko threats, and know that later on there's still this ko to fight. So black is, at this point, black is saying, you can take my stones. I don't care about these anymore. You can live. I'm going to destroy you elsewhere.
Mm.
And I'm curious what the AI says right now. So right now, black is 43 points ahead. We'll do a few more moves.
More or less.
Yeah, we'll do a few more moves, but white gets some exchanges on the outside, tries to fix its weakness here. But again, black is no longer, even though there's still this active ko here, black doesn't care about it, doesn't need to.
Black is 43 points ahead, and white has so many problems.
Yeah, exactly.
He's got these two lonely zones on the right that are like limpets, between a wall of death and a, I mean, black can basically just make, and black can also make points in the center.
Mm-hmm.
Ay.
Yeah, I would say if you look at the amount of territory white has, even if we count this entirely as whites, of course there's still the option of the ko. Even if we count this entirely as whites, it's only about 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 30, 35 points. Right? Even if you don't count the fact that there's a ko there, and white has no other points on the board. Black's corner here is worth about 15. Black's corner here is probably worth about 20, maybe a little less. So let's count it as 30. Another 10 here. Probably another 5 or so here, plus whatever it gets to attack by attacking these 3 stones in the center, plus these stones here. So it makes sense why it's 40. What is it now? 47 points now.
It feels. I mean, you can't, because it's a big event and you got to fight. But it's one of these things that just to me the position just feels resignable, because it's just.
Oh yeah.
It's just all that lies ahead is pain, more pain.
Yeah, I think this is a perfectly resignable position. There's no. The real issue is there's nothing to attack, right? When you think about what's resignable, if you're behind by 5 points, that's not always something you need to resign. If you're behind by 30 points, you don't necessarily need to resign that if there's still things to attack. There's still complications, if there's still things to happen. Unfortunately, there's no weak group on the board for black. There's nothing to attack.
Well, conversely, white has at least 2 weak groups that I can see, and actually 3. If you look, the upper one in the upper left does not look exactly eyeful either, does it?
Yeah. For sure.
All right, let's see what the plan is for black.
Unfortunately, I think it's going to be a little struggling. Black peeps here trying to make some exchanges, but unfortunately, white can't even really try to cut these stones off. Normally it would be, but then we capture these stones. So there's really no immediate value to this peep here. It kind of looks better than it is. White does get this move here to try to force some issues, but black's going to be able to just live without issue. If white plays here, black will take. If white plays here, I mean, first off, there's always the ko. But if black just wants to keep it simple, it can just live by playing here. So there's really no weakness for black in this shape.
Mm.
White chooses to try to make some eye shape in the center. Black says
big
you can
move,
live here.
Big move.
I'm just going to take a big move here. White is following a principle of attached to your opponent's strong stones, because it doesn't matter how much stronger they get. You're just trying to make a little bit of shape for yourself. Unfortunately, though, I really don't see a way out for white at this point. This move here was maybe white's kind of last desperate attempt to get out. Unfortunately, black chooses to just cap here, completely sealing these white stones in. If white tries to push through, you can just extend here and not even try to deal with this fight. And of course, there's, even if you do allow this cut here, there is this move here to still cut these stones off. So, not only is this white group not fully alive yet, you can also still cut these stones off here too. So I think we could probably go ahead and call it here. I don't really know if there's left.
Yeah. It's a wonderful, wonderful commentary, Michael. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it.
Happy to. My pleasure.
We might see Michael again. I'll try and put in my report for today. We've got a really stellar lineup and headed off by Michael. So thank you for that.
Yeah, happy to.
And I think we might even get Daniel to jump in and do some hosting. I think I have Daniel maybe lined up for Friday night, if I'm not mistaken. But we will be here every night, 7 o'clock Eastern time, to take a look at both the live games and the games for this round. At least for the next couple of days, we've got a couple of rounds a day in the round robin, and then things get a little interesting with the semis, and the schedule can change a little bit over the weekend. But what are you going to do? It's a heat dome everywhere. You're going to be inside, so you might as well be hanging out with us. So keep an eye out for reports in the e-journal, and we will see you. And just a reminder, for the morning games and for up until we go live at 7, we're just streaming the games. Thanks to the folks who suggested music. That worked out really well. So we'll probably keep doing that. But we will go back. I think we'll just go back. I actually don't know what the status of the other games are, so we'll go back to the carousel and see where the games are at. But again, Michael Fodera, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Stay cool, brother.
I will. Don't worry. I turned on the AC earlier, so hopefully it didn't mess up with the audio.
All right, I'll see you on the board.
Sounds good.